Okay, in this video lesson, what we're going to do is take our old Evil Monkeys source code and integrate it into our new Windows Evil Monkeys game that we're working on.
Right.
Okay, the idea is that by the time we get to the end of this lesson, we have an updated draw engine routine that's going to handle working with bitmaps as opposed to ASCII characters.
Right.
Now, we're not going to have user input, and we're not going to have timing functionality, so we're not going to see a game that's got characters moving around and all. That's going to come a little bit later.
By the end of this lesson, we pretty much just want the draw engine to work.
That's right. We want to see at least one frame of the game.
Yep.
Okay, so we know what's going on. Now, there's several things that's going to happen. So let's go ahead and come over to context. And before we start talking about these objectives, let me go ahead and just say this. This lesson's going to appear to be pretty involved.
Yep.
And the one thing I'm really stressing on Joel and myself is that we relax and try to go through this as easy as possible.
We're going to try to be chilled out and groovy.
That's right. But one thing I've got to remind you guys out there, we're going to start talking about some of the functions from the old Evil Monkeys game. And if it's been a while since you've looked at that particular VTM, C++ VTM number 3, or if you've never looked at it, you're going to find some of this lesson confusing. Now, we are going to just kind of sit back with each function that we have to modify and talk about what it did originally and then why we're making the change so that it'll work with WX widgets. But please, if you do have VTM number 3, this might be a real good time to go back and look at the draw engine functionality. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to start out by importing the original game code. And this is, of course, going to consist of two things. One, copying all of our headers and CPP files from the old Evil Monkeys folder over into our new Evil Monkeys project folder.
Right.
From there, we've got some things to delete, don't we, Joel?
Yes, we do.
We've got the game CPP, the game header, and main CPP.
Yeah, basically the game CPP is going to be replaced by our app frame CPP.
Right.
And game.h, well
that's because
frame.h.
There you go.
And main.cpp, that's going to be our Evil Monkeys app. That's where everything starts out. Before it was void main, now it's going to be pretty much handled by WX widgets.
Right. Okay. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to set things up to use the precompiled headers.
Right. It's going to save us a lot of time.
And this is really important because it's going to save a significant amount of time.
Right.
Especially later on when we start getting into a lot of code.
Right.
And it's going to be very easy for Joel to slip up with a finger here or there.
Yep.
And we're going to have to recompile and recompile. It happens.
Yep.
I do it even more than you. And we don't want to have to wait several minutes with each recompile.
That's right.
We'd like to keep it down to just a few seconds.
Yep.
So using the precompiled headers is extremely important because, as those of you that watched VTM issue number 4 know, when working with WX widgets, we're going to be referencing the WH header file.
WX.h.
WX header and the and images.h as well. We're going to be referencing those a lot.
And those are big headers, and they take a while to recompile.
Exactly, and so what's going to happen is with each CPP file, we're going to end up, that's going to have to get recompiled and recompiled. Yep. So if you don't know how to set up precompiled headers, just go back to, I believe it was lesson number 7 in VTM number 4, and take a look at that lesson. As a matter of fact, we did it with the Evil Monkeys code here, so it should make a lot of sense. But we're just going to set things up to make sure we use it. In other words, we'll use the correct header file in all of our old Evil Monkey code that we've brought over.
Right.
From there, import some resource files. So this is where we're finally going to start seeing some new stuff take place. We need to get our bitmaps over that we're going to use. I mean, we've got some images for a character, for our Evil Monkeys, for walls, and for floors.
That's right.
So we'll go ahead and get those into place, and then from there, it's time to go to work.
Yes, this is where the real fun begins.
Yes, we're going to modify the draw engine to work with WX widgets, and this is going to require modifying some functions, creating a new function, and then a couple of our objects down here, variables that we'll be working with. So we've got the create sprite. Okay, then we're going to have to modify this because before, I mean, what was our sprites before? We were dealing with characters. Yeah,
exactly.
Just ASCII characters. It's not going to be like that no more. We've got to set it up so that it works with bitmaps.
And then same thing with background dial.
Exact same thing. And then set window.
That's basically just telling where we want to actually draw the stuff to.
That's right.
Because before we always knew to draw to the console. Now we actually have to say, where exactly do we want to draw it? So we have set window to tell the draw engine where to draw.
And then, of course, we need a bitmap to hold our sprite image, a bitmap to hold our tile image, and then we need a bitmap to hold the canvas that we're going to draw to.
Exactly. And of course, these are both arrays because we have multiple sprite images and tile images.
That's right, allowing us, what was it, up to 16,
16,
I think?
yeah.
Different things. Even though we're not using all of that, of course. And then finally, we get to the very end where it's modify the app frame to integrate a new infrastructure.
Exactly.
With the old game code.
In English, that just means we're going to make it work.
Well, we need a player start again, we need a level, we need all that good stuff.
Right.
So we'll integrate all that stuff as well as tie it into our modified draw engine. So that's the objective. Like I said, for us, this is very important that we kind of relax through this lesson and just give it to you guys in a nice, flowing, smooth, easy kind of way.
That's right.
So there's a lot going on here. So Joel, let's start out with the first objective, import our original game code. So let's go copy that stuff over.
So if we come over to this folder here, we're going to go to the old Evil Monkeys and just copy all of these files that we had from before. And we'll just go into lesson 2, which is what we're at now.
That's right.
Go into Evil Monkeys, and let's just paste all of these files into here. So that pretty much covers just copy and pasting over.
It, but now we need to import it into our project.
That's right. So under the source files directory, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it game, just so that it kind of separates the new code from the old code. And I'll do the same thing for headers. So game, and let me just go to add existing item, and add in all the CPP files that are new. And if one already exists in the project, it'll automatically filter through it. So there's all the CPP files, and for the game, I'll import all the header files that we need. Dink, and done. Now for the second thing we need to do is we need to move those 3 files. So game.cpp, gone. Main.cpp, gone. And game.h, gone.
Okay.
So if we go back to context, we've just completed step number 1 and step number 2.
Hooray!
So up to step number 3, we just need to include the std.wx.h header file that is being used to control the precompiled header.
That's right.
Whew, mouthful. So if we come back over to here, let's just go to app frame. As you can see, this one is including std.wx.h, and we'll just, as we did in the previous VTM, just include this at the top of every source file. So just take a second. This is probably going to be the easiest part, so enjoy the easiness. So that's it, and we can just close all these files out now and make sure we save them. Although when we compile it, automatically save them anyway. But anyways, so
okay.
There we have it. Now if we come back over to context.
Well, we're just flying through this, aren't we?
Oh, yes, we are. It's so easy.
Not for long.
Let's import our resource files.
Okay, so we need our bitmaps now.
That's right. And let me just go over to our directory structure right here. And let me go up a folder. You'll notice I put a data folder here.
Mm-hmm.
And inside of here we have, let's see, we have 5 different bitmaps that just represent the images that we have. So we have this guy, we have the evil monkey, the fireball, the guy, and the wall.
And the wall, yeah. And these are just, in the way we're designing the game, these are 32 by 32.
Yep.
You can design whatever size you'd like. Of course, you may not want to make it tremendously huge for various reasons we'll talk about later. But we did 32 by 32, and is there anything else we want to talk about?
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah, okay.
So let's go ahead and exit out of this.
We made them in Photoshop.
Ooh. It makes a big difference which you use.
Make your own. Make them look however you want.
That's right. Make them look better.
There you go. No, Zach did a great job
Zach
with
did an awesome job. Let's go over to our resource view here. And as we did it in the last lesson, we'll add a resource. Just give it a second. And let's import some files. So if we go up, go to our data directory, just select all of these 5 guys and open them up, and it imports them. Awesome. Now what we're going to do is make sure, as you can see, all of these have really funky names. So let's open up the properties window and make sure they're all named properly. So come over to this guy, and we'll just, in parentheses, quotation marks, empty tile.
All capitals.
All caps. And let's just do this for everyone. Slightly tedious, but not that bad.
Nah, not bad at all.
Bad for me, though.
Yeah, it's an awful lot of typing you have to do.
Yeah, my poor fingers. Okay, so we have our player tile. And finally, we have our wall tile. And of course, we're not going to use this right away. We're going to be using this in the last step, but it's good to get this out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's exit this out. Save all these files, so it saves them. And let's kind of go back to our Solution Explorer and just get back into this view so that we have something to start with.
Okay.
So if we go back over into context, check it out. We've finished all the first 4 steps, so we're a long ways away.
Wow, that only took a few minutes.
No, we're not a long ways away. We're a long ways into it.
Yes. But
so
now this
we're
is
up
where
to
things are going to slow down a little bit.
Slow down just a little bit.
Just a little. So we've got to do some modifying.
Yep. So let's go back into our code.
Okay.
And let's go into our header file, our draw engine header file. And let's just look at a few things. We have create sprite. This is the first one we're going to tackle.
Okay.
This guy, you will notice we're passing a character C.
And we're not dealing with characters no more.
No, we actually want to deal with WX bitmaps.
That's right. We're now dealing with sprite bitmaps.
So let's change this to WX bitmap pointer and
sprite.
Sprite.
Yeah.
So the same thing is going to go for the create background tile. So let's go into here and change this from character C
again to a WX bitmap.
To a WX bitmap. and we'll just call this
pointers
tile.
tile, yeah.
So that's the main things that we're going to change, but we're also going to need to add a function. So let's come into here and add the set window that we were talking about before. It doesn't need to return anything. We'll just call this set window, and we'll pass it what bitmap we want to deal with. So we'll just call it in, whatever bitmap's coming in. And we need to pass it a width and a height, just so we know the size of our screen, or our level, if you will. So we'll pass this width equals, we'll default it to 30, and the height defaulting to 20.
Now, thinking about how this is going to draw originally without any resizing stuff going on, is that big enough, or did you want to do like 20 by 10?
No, it doesn't matter. We'll set it when we set the window.
Okay, good enough. Yeah, good enough.
So inside of here, the last, another few things we have to do. Remember, these are an array of characters. We're not dealing with characters.
Just not dealing. We need WX bitmaps.
Yes, so they're all going to be bitmap pointers, arrays of bitmap pointers.
And we need another WX bitmap.
And we'll call this, what do we want to call it?
Did we call it Win Canvas once upon a time?
Yeah, Win Canvas. That's a good one. Win Canvas. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we're drawing to.
Right. So we have the header file pretty much scoped out. Let's save that and go back over into our draw engine. Let's actually get this stuff working. Well, actually, one more thing. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Come back over into draw engine. We do have a few things that we don't need to do anymore. We have our go to XY and cursor visibility.
Yeah, cursor visibility.
Yes, I almost forgot about that. So let's just delete these two guys, because that's completely Windows-based. We know we're working with a console.
That's right.
It's completely different now. So let's just delete those two guys, and come back over to drawengine.cpp. At the very beginning, set cursor visibility to false. We don't need to do that. And we're not using Windows.h anymore. We're using WX widget. So let's delete IOStream as well, because we're using IOStream simply for the cout. We don't need that anymore. And let's kind of scroll all the way to the bottom, where go to XY and cursor visibility were declared.
Not needed.
Not needed. So let's just scroll up here, select them, and delete them.
Good.
So all set. Now let's go to the create sprite.
Okay, this is where we're going to slow down a little bit. Before we start just typing away, what did create sprite originally do, Joel?
Well, create sprite just basically took the character that was passed into it.
Passed right here.
Yep, passed into it, and saved into the array of sprites that we had, which were just an array of characters.
Right. Finding through, and right here, putting it in.
Exactly. Nothing absolutely complicated or anything like that.
Basically, we're saying, put it in this slot in the array, put this guy in there, and it puts it in there. It's that simple.
So in this case, we have to change this prototype to input a WX bitmap.
That's right.
So let's change this to bitmap sprite.
But now it's going to be a little bit different. It's not just as easy as tossing it into the array like that.
No, not at all. Now what we need to do, well, remember, we have the image. It's actually, let me go over to the folder right here. And if you look at the player tile, you'll notice that we have this white area around it. We want to make sure that that white area is masked out.
That's
and
right.
by default, the mask color is not white. So remember, to load a file, we can use WX bitmap to load it, but if we want it to be, if we want to change the mask color, we're going to use an image.
It needs to be an image.
So let's create an image, and we'll just call it IMG.
But thankfully for us, the WX bitmap has a great member function.
Yes, well, actually, the WX bitmap has the member function convert to image.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It has a great function, yeah. Convert to image.
So we can convert this
just
guy
call on it.
to image, and it returns to us an image, which is perfect. And then we just say image, just as we did in the previous
set
VTM.
mask color.
Whoa,
wow.
Color.
There you go.
And it's going to be
255,
white.
yeah. There we go.
Simple enough. And then the last thing we're going to need to do is put this into our array.
Yeah, but at this point we need to put it back in as a bitmap.
As a bitmap. So we're going to create a new bitmap.
Based off this image.
Based off the image. So we pass the image as a constructor, the constructor parameter. So that's it.
So basically, it's kind of like what we did is we got the bitmap in, and we just took a quick detour.
Yep.
Because we needed to set the mask color, and the only way to set the mask color was off of an image. So we just converted it to an image real quick, set the mask color. Then once we had that set properly, we took the image and converted it back to a bitmap, and then dumped that over into our array.
Exactly. So another thing that we should be careful about is, well, actually, the next one we're getting to is, let's see, draw sprite. Okay. So we have to draw the sprite, right? So let's go into here, and to draw the sprite, what do we need to do? Well, the first thing is we need a device context, right? We need to draw to something.
Got to have our DC.
Right. So in this case, since we're drawing to some bitmap out in space, we need a memory DC. Not out in space, but out in memory. So WX memory DC.
Sounds good.
And the first thing we're going to need to do is select the object. Now, this is kind of a new concept here. Select object allows us to take a bitmap and associate it with a DC.
Right.
And that's what this is doing. So we want to associate it with which bitmap? Well,
it's going to be the star wind canvas.
Right, star wind canvas.
That's where we're drawn to.
Exactly. So star wind canvas, perfect. Now we want to actually draw the bitmap. So just dc.draw bitmap. And what do we want to draw? Well, we have the index.
That's
and
right.
we have the array. So we just say...
That's from the sprite image.
Exactly. So sprite image index. And where do we want to draw it? So we pass it a class point.
Now, yeah, we do have our position X and position Y that's come in, but now this is going to also get into another thing because we need to worry about a grid size.
That's right. By default, the grid size, we don't really want to set a constant here. That wouldn't be cool.
No, not at all.
So what we can do is come up to here. Let's just define a constant that says grid size.
All right, and we got to... So let's go and type in 32. Now,
Yeah.
Grid size. What is grid size?
Well, basically, it's considered... We're thinking of a level here.
Okay.
And in this case, the grid size is the size of each of the sprites.
Okay.
So the tile is going to be 32 by 32, and so is
So we'll start at 0, or the next one will start at 32, or the next one will start
Exactly.
at... And so on and so forth.
So what we need to do...
Some very basic math here.
Yes, very basic. Wait. Check this out. Position X multiplied by grid size.
Ooh, so if I said to go at 0 by 0, and it multiplied by 32, it's going to be at 0 by 0. Ooh. But if we wanted to go at, let's say, at 1...
Right.
It's going to move the correct number of pixels over. So 1 times 32, we'll say 32 pixels over is where this is going to start at, and 32 pixels down if we did 1 by 1.
Perfect.
So that's very important to
Yes,
understand.
very much so. So the next thing we're going to do is take position Y.
So we didn't have to worry about that when it was just characters.
So we have that, and that's cool. So after we're done drawing, here's a very important step.
Did you get all the way to the end of that? And,
oh, wait. One last thing that's very
that's
important is that we want to use the mask. So we're going to set this to true.
That's right. That's very important.
And what's even more important is the fact that after selecting an object, it's associating this bitmap to this device context. After we're done using it, we need to kind of de-associate it with it.
Boy, is this important.
Very, very important. If you do not set this to
You'll know
null bitmap,
you'll know you messed up.
yeah, you can get major memory leaks, and within no time at all, you'll have some serious problems.
Yes.
So be sure to select object wx null, and that just de-associates it.
Drive it home a little bit more if you can. Why is it so important to de-associate it?
Well, basically, if it's connected to it, it thinks it's always connected to it. And if I come back to draw sprite again, I'm selecting it with another object, and then it kind of just you start leaving room for memory leaks.
Exactly.
So it's very, very important.
Just leaving unoccupied or unused memory out there.
Yeah, that's never a cool thing. Never. So at this point, at erase sprite, this is of course also going to be changed because we use go to xy, right?
Right.
So let's just erase this function.
Yeah, because there's no xy to go to.
There is no go to xy.
So we got to start working with our. We need another DC.
In fact, it's so much the same as draw sprite. All we need to do is draw the background.
So let's copy.
So copy paste, copy. Why write code when you don't have to?
I agree.
So instead of sprite image, we're going to use tile image, and we're assuming that the base index 0 is going to be the background. The background.
Yeah, the background. Yeah, my bad.
So let's just save that, and that's all there is to it.
That's it.
Now set map, exactly the same as before. Now create background tile. This is exactly the same concept as our create sprite, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we can do is come up here, and again we can copy and paste code, which is something I enjoy doing greatly. So come up here, erase that, copy it, paste it, and almost done.
Except change the word. Okay, that's one.
WX bitmap needs to be tile.
We need to get rid of sprite, and that needs to be
tile. And that's it. Oh, well, one more thing. Right here, we need to change this to tile image, so it's accessing the right array.
Okay.
And set mask color can be 255. Although it's not absolutely critical. In fact, in this case, all of our tiles don't actually have any mask color.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case, we'll set a mask color in this as well.
Okay.
And finally, the last function we need to worry about is the draw background. So this draws the entire map for us. It draws the map. So go to XY. Of course, we do not need this.
No.
And instead of using cout, we're going to use the draw bitmap function again. So we're going to need a DC. So let's just copy this code right here and paste it in here and make sure that this select object null happens at the end of the function. So let's just go down to the bottom here, put that in there. And this draw bitmap, this is going to go on each loop, just like the cout was. So it's going through X and Y, every position, screen height. Remember screen height and width we passed in before. Or actually, we're going to set that in set window in a second. So right here, what we're going to do is draw a tile image. And which one do we want to draw? We want to draw the one referenced by map X and Y. Remember, map holds the information about our level.
Right.
So we're referencing the index at map XY inside of the tile image. So right here, which position do we want to put it at? X, Y, done.
Boy, that was tough.
Yeah, very tough. So that's all there is to it. So the draw engine at this point should be completely modified to work, except for one thing. We need to have the new set window function.
Okay.
So as you can see from our draw engine, if we come back to here, we had this long thing where we have to actually set the wind canvas that we had before.
Right.
So let's copy this function right here. Go back to our draw engine. Let's just put this on the very bottom.
That's cool.
And do not forget your draw engine. So we have our set window. And inside of here, what do we want to do, Buzz?
Well, we need to go ahead and set wind canvas to equal in what we're sending in, the bitmap that is.
Right.
And we can go ahead and set a screen width to where we're bringing in W and a screen height to H so that our screen width and height is now set.
Yep, precisely. And the other thing we need to do, I almost forgot, you cannot set the default parameter twice, so let me just
that would make it a little unhappy.
So otherwise, that's it. That's
Cool.
all there is to it. So if we go back into context, just to kind of give you guys another perspective, all of this is done. Doesn't that give you a sense of accomplishment?
Yeah. But at the moment, I mean, if we were to try to compile this and run it,
there's nothing new that's going to happen.
No.
Because nothing's really changed in the main app. We've just been modifying files that we've added that aren't associated or integrated into our new code.
And our new code, we're not using
any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that just doesn't work out. So what we need to do is come back over into Evil Monkeys, go over to appframe. Well, let's go to appframe.h first. And okay, so it's not including any of our game files, right? So that's the first thing we're going to need to do. First thing, what do we need to include? Our draw engine, which is our graphics engine, if you will. We also need to include level.h. And finally, we need to include mage.h. That's going to be our main player. So after including those three files, let's come down to here. And these guys all up here, these are basically our controls, right? These are our panels, our windows, our static text. Now let's create some private variables. So let me call these game variables.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So inside of here,
we need a level.
We definitely need a level. So a level pointer, we'll just call it level.
We need a mage.
And we do need a mage.
We need that player running around.
And finally, we need well, not finally, almost finally, we need a draw engine, and we'll just call this the draw area. And we also need the back buffer, and this is where everything's going to be drawn.
New concept, nice and slow here.
Yeah, draw area. Remember, draw area is going to reference some place to put things, right?
Right.
And the back buffer, which is what I'm creating here, the back. If I can type, the back buffer is where we're going to be placing all the information. This is where we're going to draw the level. This is where everything's going to happen, where we're going to draw the sprites. And once the back buffer has been filled up with our game, images and everything, we're going to flip this onto the screen. So we're going to draw this bitmap, this back buffer, onto the screen so the users can see it.
And why is this so important?
Well, it prevents flickering. That's one of the main.
One thing.
One of the main things that is the main reason why you'd want to do something like this. Because let's say you have a very large draw function, if you will, that draws a whole bunch of things. And if you directly draw to the screen, the user is going to be able to see, if your computer's fairly slow, it draw each of those elements. It's a lot better to draw those elements behind the scenes and then flip it onto the screen all of a sudden so that he sees one complete frame after another.
Not only that, but we get some other benefit out of this as well, don't we? When we update our character, moving our character around, we're not redrawing the entire screen. So what happens if you move your screen off and back?
Right. Yeah. That's another important thing is that if we don't have this back buffer, every time we need to redraw the screen, some part of it, we would have to redraw the entire thing.
Yeah.
But since we have this back buffer, we can simply draw what's on the back buffer.
Right.
We don't need to update everything all over again.
Right.
And that's very, very cool. So with that, we have all these. Now we just need to go over to AppFrame.
The AppFrame CPP file.
And implement everything that we have just created here. So.
All right, so a little bit of typing.
First thing we need to do, let's go to Game Window, is we need someplace to update this, right?
Okay.
So the first thing we're going to do is come to Game Window. And connect it to the paint event, just like we kind of did before. But this time we're going to use the connect function. So we don't need an ID or a second ID, so we'll just set these to
This is very important, by the way, if you want to see your first frame drawing.
Oh yeah, definitely. So WX EVT paint, and this is where the back buffer comes in handy. And then let's just enter, because there's a lot of stuff here. WX object
event function.
Nothing different than what we did in the last VTM.
And reference.
Or we're going to reference app frame on paint. Of course, we haven't created this yet, but we will in a second.
But we will.
So
it's all good.
And we want it to reference the function that is a member of this.
Right.
So with that all set, what we're going to do is come down here and, okay, now we have our level pointer, we have our mage. Are they actually doing anything? Are they populated by anything? Well, no, because all they are is pointers, right?
Right.
So we need to actually create these objects so that we can see them in the game. So the first thing we're going to do is create the back buffer. So the back buffer is something that the draw engine needs and everyone needs.
Right.
So this is the first
thing discussed a second ago.
Exactly. So back buffer equals new WX bitmap, and we're going to have a level X and a level Y just as we had before.
And we're going to multiply each of those by the grid size.
Right. And we're going to have a level Y multiplied by grid size.
We better go up top and
add these two guys too.
Yeah, define our grid size.
So let's come back up to here, and let's just define our grid size. And this is going to be 32.
That's right.
And we'll define our level X and level Y. And this is going to be, what did we decide was a good?
It's like 20 for X and 10 for Y.
That's a good idea.
For starting out.
And 10 for Y. I actually prefer to use tabs. 1 second. Ah, that looks so much better. Okay. And let's come back down to here where we were. And some other things we're going to need to do. Remember, we have to create the different sprites that we have in our resource file, the empty tile, the enemy tile. We have to associate this with our draw engine. So what we're going to do is say draw area dot create background tile. So remember, we have, if you look down the bottom right, we have empty tile and enemy tile. So let's create these guys. This is going to be at tile empty. And if you remember, we defined these before in the level. So tile empty is going to be whichever index is inside that constant. And to load this from the resource file, we use the macro WX bitmap, and it's going to be empty tile because we defined the name before.
That's right.
In the last step. And the other tile that we're going to create is simply the not enemy tile.
I do tile wall.
Yeah, wall tile or wall. Let's see. Oh, wall tile.
Well, it depends. All right, yeah, you're looking on that side. I'm looking over on the.
Oh, okay, my
what
bad.
we label it as.
So right here, what we're going to be calling is
tile underscore wall. There you go.
So everything is set. Well, almost.
Almost. 3 more things to come. Here they come.
So we have our create sprite, and
now we got 3 of them we're going to need. First one we can do sprite underscore player.
And this guy is going to be, if you look down here, player tile.
Player tile. Pile top.
So much to say.
Yes, I know.
After a while, your mouth just kind of goes blah.
Just copy and paste twice. And very nice.
Okay.
And an enemy for the next one. Of course, it's sprite enemy, but you know that.
Yes, I know. Oh,
We're
I
testing
know.
our audience.
No, I'm testing you.
Okay. I won't say nothing then. I fail. Woo.
It's so fun to fail.
And our fireball, of course.
Our fireball.
And our fireball tile. Again, over there in the resource files, you can see that. Awesome.
So, we have what we have there. One more thing we need to do. The draw area needs to know about this back buffer.
That's right.
So,
sure.
We'll say draw area dot set window. This almighty function that we created before. And it brings up yay. So we set up our back buffer. And the width and height, well, it's going to be level underscore X, as we specified here.
And level underscore Y.
And level underscore Y.
Nice.
And a few more things to do. We need to create our level, don't we?
Yes, we need to create a level. So level equals new level.
And the draw engine is simply going to be draw area. And
of course, draw area, we're going to reference that.
We're going to pass the pointer to it.
Yeah, pass the pointer.
And level size is simply going to be level X and level Y.
Yes.
And let's see. I was going to copy and paste that for some reason.
Need a new player.
We also want to create our new player. So player equals new mage. And we're going to pass it the level that we just created. And the reference to the pointer to our draw area. And we'll just pass that to 0. Almost there. We're almost set.
Now we need to draw our level.
We draw our level. Now remember, when we draw our level, it's going to call the draw area's draw background function. Okay? So this is drawing to the back buffer. Simply by calling this function, the user isn't going to see anything. It's not something that we see directly because it's on the back buffer. So we draw the level. We're also going to add the player so that the player is associated with this level. So pass the player pointer. And we're also going to add some enemies in here just to make it a little bit interesting. So we'll just default it to 3. It doesn't really make much difference. And we're going to also set the player start so he starts out at the beginning. Now this is a new function that I created that's new from the previous version of our Evil Monkeys.
Okay.
And if we look in level.cpp, just so you guys know, it's nothing fantastic or anything. Well, it is fantastic, but it isn't unbelievable. Set player position simply calls the players, which is a sprite, sets his position to start X, start Y. So that's where we want the player to start, and that defaults to 1, 1.
Okay.
Which, if you look at the sprite.cpp, and let's just come down into set position, all I'm doing here is when I set the position, I erase where he was before, change the facing direction so that he's not facing a direction, and finally setting his new position and drawing it at that new location. Very simple stuff. So just so you guys know, so you go, ooh, that's new. Okay, so let's go back to our appframe.cpp. After we set the player start, one more thing we need to do is update the level so that everything gets initialized. Okay, getting close. One more thing we need to do is create the paint function. So if we come over into appframe, let's first define this function.
Right.
So we have our void on paint function, and as we saw before, it's going to be a paint event, and we're going to pass it the reference to a WX paint event. So let's just copy this, go back into the CPP file for appframe, and let's just define it. And remember, this is the on paint function for the draw area, the game, the game window, if you will. So
a WX paint.
So we're going to create a WX paint DC, and it's going to be DC. And what we're going to do is call dc.setBackground, and we're going to set this to be a black brush at first, okay? Because black is cool.
That's right.
So we'll say WX black _ brush, which is nice. And then we're going to clear it so that it actually clears it to black. Just by setting the background doesn't mean it will clear it. So after we set that, finally what we're going to do is actually draw the bitmap. So let's go ahead and draw the bitmap to our of our back buffer, right? Because that's where all the game is being drawn. So we take our back buffer, and we'll draw it where? At the top left corner. And let's just end that off. Now, if I didn't make any typos,
okay,
everything should work fine.
You should.
So
big save.
Well,
big
save.
Well, that's okay.
That kind of saved everything. Oh, I made an error. Tile empty. Cursor identifier not found. I forgot to remove it from here. No worries. So I just that was in the destructor for the draw engine, if you're curious. And tile empty. I probably spelled it MP.
MP.
So let's just restart. That's not bad. Only 3 errors. Give me a break. Look at that.
Look at that.
So hoping, praying. Well, let's just go back to context real quick so that if it screws up, you guys can see something cool first. Ooh, text. So we've modified appframe to integrate a new infrastructure for old code. So at this point, what we're looking to see is the game with 1 frame.
And even though I have 1 frame, that means it does indeed have a player. It has a level.
Yep, it has all of the basic things we need.
The essentials, yeah.
So let's go back into here, and let's run it. Look at this. It's not moving, and I can't move around.
Nope.
But there it is. There it is. Everything's loaded. The players are drawn. The characters are drawn. The enemies are drawn. Everything is there.
Yes. And really, Joel, that completes what we set out to do in this lesson. It is a big lesson.
Yes, it is.
There's a lot of stuff. But, I mean, coming back over here to context real quick, I mean, we did indeed import all the original old Evil Monkeys code. We deleted out of these guys because we didn't need them no more.
Yep.
We're just changing the whole style of the game in a sense. We got all the precompiled headers set up to handle properly. So you notice when you compiled, it compiled real fast.
Oh, yeah.
We brought in all the new bitmap files that Zach had put together for us. And then we modified the draw engine to work with WX widgets. So we went through and basically took out all the character stuff and made it work with bitmaps.
Right.
And then finally we modified the app frame so that it would then handle creating the player and creating this, that, and the other, and then the proper integration into the draw engine so that we would indeed finally get this right here.
Woohoo.
And with that, that's going to bring this lesson to a close. Thanks, everyone.